North Star was written by David Goodman, who gave us The Forgotten, which was a solid part of a trilogy of episodes that included Azadi Prime and Damage. And he also gave us Precious Cargo, perhaps the worst Enterprise episode that wasn't written by B&B. So it's no surprise this is a divisive story. Some feel that this is mindless fun, while others feel that that's only half right. And sorry, sports fans, but I'm in the latter category. North Star is Firefly stripped of anything remotely interesting. North Star is devoid of inspiration, trying desperately to bank on Star Trek paint-by-numbers grafted onto a Western setting. Science fiction and the Western are two very different genres that keep managing to hook up with each other somehow, probably because of the common elements of the frontier. Star Trek had done 2 episodes previously based upon this combination, Spectre of the Gun and A Fistful of Datas, and both were successes. This despite the fact that the latter is more mindless fun than North Star could ever hope to be, and had the tired holodeck run-amok trope working against it. There was novelty there, though, whereas North Star is thoroughly lacking in it beyond Scott Bakula is wearing a cowboy hat, which is not terribly exciting, leaving aside the fact that Scott Bakula made an entire career out of wearing the wrong costume on a show called Quantum Leap. So let's get started. It begins with a lynching, only we quickly see the guy has some odd skin growths, which means that he's an alien in Star Trek. And with him dead, the teaser ends, and we come back to see the guy now in a pine box.
I hope you're not planning to bury him in the cemetery.
These people don't bury their dead.
Alright, well, why aren't you doing that instead then? Or is it just their sacred tradition to leave the body where it falls, like it's golf or something?
He killed a man. Self-defense or not, that's a hanging offense for a skag.
It's the law of the West. Not far away is when we find Archer and T'Pol in appropriate costumes. This is during Season 3, which means that Archer and company have diverted from their mission to save the Earth in order to visit Planet Cowboy. I'm not going to hold that against them. When you stumble across a perfect recreation of the Wild West in an area of space known for being completely messed up, it's at least worth checking out. Though I do wonder how they found it, because, at least the 37s, which this episode cribs from extensively, tried to connect the dots to show how Voyager would find it. Here, I guess they just sort of stumbled across it. Fine, let's get on with disappointing me. There's about 6,000 humans and 1,000 aliens throughout numerous settlements here, so Tucker and T'Pol will be in charge of acquiring a horse to do some recon work.
$20. She's yours.
Sounds kind of steep.
Oh, right. When you buy things, you have to give them something. Gotta remember those technical details. Well, I don't want it now that you put your mouth on it. He manages to convince the guy to rent him the horse for a while, leading to the inevitable.
Do you have any experience riding these animals?
I've seen every John Ford Western.
Who?
Look, how hard can it be?
Remember that this is the same guy who can't fly a pod around the Enterprise without banging into it. He's going to probably find a way to activate the horse's self-destruct. Meanwhile, Archer is foreshadowing the solutions of many future Enterprise crew members. He's going to look for answers in a place that serves alcohol. This place is run by a descendant of the famous Cooper Smith, the one who overthrew the aliens called the Skags. Ah, that explains the animosity. If there's an overthrow involved, it probably wasn't a pleasant experience. And speaking of unpleasant, the guy who led the lynching last night comes in with his flunkies. Seems he's a deputy, no less. That must be why he gets to wear the Willy Wonka hat. He starts messing with the Skag bar hand, making him drink some Old West booze and trying to provoke him into shooting him in what the scene insists is full of tension, I'm guessing.
Excuse me. You think I can get some more coffee before you shoot him?
I'll admit, for Archer, that was downright clever. The deputy takes umbrage at this interruption of his bullying, though, and the sheriff's curious about the stranger in town drinking coffee on a hot day like this. So he tells the deputy to make sure that Archer leaves town like he said he was. And admittedly, I'd want to get Archer out of my town as fast as possible before he started rooting through the trash and arguing with stray dogs about things. That evening, Archer pays a visit to the woman who'd paid for the coffin to get answers about the Skagarans. I guess that's their full name.
I don't think that Skagaran's life is any less valuable than mine.
The only thing I hate more than a Vulcan is a bigot. She decides to bring him along to night school, where she teaches the Skagarans because they're not legally allowed to be educated. He meets up with Trip and T'Pol there, who are inspecting the remains of this spaceship and recovered the data modules. They'll try to use them since, they've been sitting here exposed to the elements for over 2 centuries, so they should be fine. This is when the history of this place is revealed. Like in the 37s, aliens kidnapped humans from Earth as slave labor. Like in the 37s, the humans rose up and overthrew their oppressors, because we're just that awesome. But instead of building cities too beautiful to be turned into a matte painting, the locals recreated the Wild West. I guess the aliens must have kidnapped their horses too, and they also brought along, or somehow conveniently had substitutes for hay, tobacco, coffee, and God knows what else, and the locals all somehow had the means to recreate all kinds of 19th century technology, up to and including either photography or very advanced painting. Who knows? Okay, we'll go along with it. Cooper Smith led the uprising that freed the slaves, and in the process slaughtered whole families of their oppressors, so he's called the Butcher by the Skagarans. Of course, it's the Old West, and there are a lot of cattle, so he might be an actual butcher. We're about halfway through the episode by now, and it lacks any kind of intellectual punch, which is fine so long as you have fun able to take its place, which we don't. The episode has had one good line drowning in the sea of mediocrity. If it had been silly or clearly a popcorn flick tale, that would have been fine. It's just dull, though. And the Western setting is so stale it might as well have been sitting on a shelf since the 19th century. Want to shake things up? Hey, how about if the sheriff was Chinese? After all, they were working on the railroads at this period when they were being mass kidnapped, so why not have that? And some American Indians in the background, and some Latinos, all filling in the roles that in Hollywood would always go to the white guys. Why not show the humans have rallied together despite racial lines in the face of alien bondage? If the knowledge of aliens united a war-scarred Earth, wouldn't it work when they were all suffering the same oppression from aliens? And why not have Cooper Smith be a former slave, someone who knows a thing or two about fighting for one's freedom? But if it wants to be a straight-up Western, fine. But give it something fresh. A recycled plot, and yet another planet-like Earth of the Week manages to combine 2 potentially exciting things and handed us boredom in a can long past its expiration date. School's interrupted by the deputy and his flunkies to arrest the school teacher, and of course it gets rough. So Glassjaw Archer steps in to resist and quickly gets taken out of the action. Yep, just one punch. Didn't expect any more. The next morning, the sheriff pulls Archer from the cell and asks a few questions, and to argue about the laws that were created to ensure that the Skagarans could never enslave the humans again. When Archer disagrees, he tells him to please get the hell out of his town and don't come back, which should be familiar given Archer's history with first contact situations. As for Bethany, the school teacher, she'll get 10 years in prison for what she did, which isn't fair, so Archer says, I could get back to trying to stop the Xindi from blowing up the planet Earth, or I could stage a one-man jailbreak. I'd like it on record that the next episode is similitude, which means that in the span of 1 week, Archer has decided that an innocent person can be killed if it's for the good of the mission, but letting an innocent person go to jail, that's a step too far. Anyway, he's going to be the big hero. He's going to come in there, and he is going to rescue her. Enjoy the rescue! So Archer suddenly remembers, oh, of course, I have a spaceship with a matter transporter. So he has them both beamed up. After all, she's going to need the best care there is.
I've removed the projectile.
Unfortunately, they're stuck with Phlox. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I have a sneaking suspicion that medicine is a bit more involved than what we just saw. Because before that clip, all we saw was him trying to get at the bullet. So apparently the cure for that is pull the bullet out, wave it at people, and then hold a conversation. It seems to me he should be, I don't know, putting something over it or packing something in it or run some futuristic tool over it to heal everything up, but not shooting the shit like he's on the porch drinking lemonade. To top that off, he also reveals that Bethany is in fact 1/4 Skagaran, And how much better is the story knowing that the only one standing up for the Skagarans is actually one passing as a human? What would have been interesting is if the sheriff or the deputy had some Skagaran DNA. But interesting has no place in this story, so let's cut to the discussion of what happened. The deputy is convinced that Archer's working with the Skagarans and proposes a quite reasonable plan. How about if we go to the Skagaran settlement and, follow me here, murder them all? Can I get a show of hands in favor of this, yes? The sheriff refuses, so the deputy quits. Well, I can't keep calling him the deputy then. Could use his real name, or I could call him Captain Wonka Hat. Take a guess at which I'll do. Archer decides the only thing to do is to explain how things really are to these people, so he and a few of his Makos, as well as T'Pol and Reed, arrive in a shuttle pod in the middle of town to explain there is still an Earth out there, and that eventually they can return to it. The sheriff's somewhat resistant to the idea of changing their ways towards the Skagarans. I guess there's no civil authority in this town except for him. But as Archer explains, there's no returning to Earth if they can't get along with others. Not unless they want to try captaining a ship, of course. Well, Captain Wonka Hat and his posse show up to give us the inevitable big Western shootout, leading to Archer getting shot, but nevertheless taking on the bad guy hand-to-hand, while Malcolm is stuck dealing with a hostage situation.
Stay back.
I'll kill her.
Well, he is the competent one on the team. Archer finally overcomes the bad guy, and in so doing, ends all prejudice forever. The sheriff agrees some of the laws can be changed, and naturally he speaks for all towns everywhere, and that definitely there will not be a posse like the one that shot him ever riding into town from another settlement once they hear that the Skagarans are being treated equally here. So it's a happy ending. Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to the deputy. You don't deserve a hat that nice. All scores are relative to the series. Final score for North Star is 5 out of 10. It's either a 30-minute action western padded out to an hour, or an uninspired Planet of the Week, depending on how you want to look at it. Bakula practically sleepwalks through the role while everyone around him is doing their best with what they have. Glenn Morshower, of 24 and the Transformers movies, makes his 5th and final appearance in the Star Trek franchise. And despite being a guy known for his low-key neutral official speak, he and James Parks dominate every scene they share with Bakula. But despite having a whole been-there-done-that vibe to it, it still works out to being a typical Enterprise episode. Damning though that might seem.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!